Thanks for joining us on Coast to Coast Pest Talk.
I was out doing a bed bug inspection until literally right before this podcast. I walked in and opened my laptop. And
nice.
Great. All right, let's do this. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to Coast Pest Talk. I'm your host, Gabe with Pest Patrol, joined here by your other host, Andy Sinevsky with Permatech Pest Management up in Syracuse, New York. Before we jump into our episode today, I want to remind you to join our LinkedIn Coast to Coast Pest Talk group. It's going down. If you're in the pest management industry or adjacent, we'd love to have you. Today we have a special guest, Chris Stankiewicz. Pretty good, yeah? Stankiewicz. We're going to be discussing niche specialization in pest control, and he is the owner of Stank Environmental and also Safe Schools IPM.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting. I'm excited to talk to Chris about this stuff. But before we did, I had to say something. I saw your Pest Posse interview with Foster.
Yeah.
And the cover photo where he's promoting it, was that like a GQ photo shoot where you're like crouched down by your truck? I was like, dang,
right.
man.
Yes.
Did you have like a professional photographer, or was that just like an iPhone?
No, that was GQ actually called me out for that.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Next one's going to be like shirtless. Is that?
Yeah. Suspenders, just suspenders.
Just like the fireman, right? Like the fireman.
No, that was the iPhone tipped upside down. So you got that upper angle.
Okay.
And it was leaning against the tire of my van.
So this makes me think, do we need a Coast to Coast Pest Talk calendar with
I think we do. I'd pay to see that.
Let's bring in Chris and see if he wants to do that. Chris, how you doing?
Hey guys, I got a face for radio, but
perfect.
Good job on the GQ stuff, Gabe.
You're hired for the calendar, Chris.
Thanks, man.
Just pick a month, we'll get you in there.
Nice.
Oh my gosh. So Chris, for people who don't know who you are or whatever, how about a little intro? Where your business is at, regionally, and what you guys are into.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. We're on the Eastern Seaboard of New Jersey. It's really where we're based, and we serve a good majority of the state of New Jersey only. Specialized niche with educational facilities. We actually later on in our tenure, Stank Environmental was the company that was started, and then we have a doing business as called Safe Schools IPM. So yeah, that's really where we cater, and that's the reach that we have at this point.
Yeah. So, did you start out with just you, like traditional pest control, just doing lots of different things and niche down, or did you come into this like, I'm going to be this thing?
I started this from the ground up, from nothing. The quick version of the story, I was a student at the University of Delaware. I had a couple business degrees, and the long story short is I went to the wrong job fair. I ended up at an agricultural show. I got an internship with a large pest control company, and out of school they hired me in commercial sales. So I learned the format of how commercial sales and the plans were set. I actually left the industry for a short period of time in the corporate world, and it was around 08, 09. The economy was rough. You couldn't really buy a job, and I wouldn't recommend to many people. But out of haste, I started this company, and some 14 or so years later, we're still standing. So proud of that. But it's been certainly a lot of fighting and a lot of grinding to get here.
Wow. So you got like that's the first story I've ever heard of someone actually got literally shanghaied into pest control. Like you went in the wrong door, and here you are.
Exactly what happened.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So what job fair were you trying to go to? That's the question.
I wanted to go to the business show, and if I was nothing else at school, I was organized. And I'm like, where are my peers? I'm seeing cows and farms. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And a pest control company, like I said, was there for agricultural purposes, of course, and hey, we have an internship available. It's in New Jersey. Let's go.
Wow. That's fantastic. Oh my goodness. So the school portion of it is really where you really specialize, right? That's like your bread and butter niche. How did that come about? Was there an impetus that led you down that road?
There really wasn't, Andy. What happens is just when you're your back's to the wall and you don't really have anything, you'll do just about anything to survive. And, ultimately what happened, I was knocking on a lot of doors. I knew commercial was really where I wanted to be. And I did meet with a school district, and the supervisor said at the time, look, there are these laws here in New Jersey and they're very difficult to get right. There's a lot of liability. If you get this right, you can have my business. And it's difficult to crack a segment when you don't have anything to base it off. So I still, my good friend Charlie, I still owe him a lot. And I just worked my tail off to understand the ins and outs of the law. And ultimately what happened, you shorten the field to your competitors. We know, being in the industry, there's a lot of competition out there. It's a great industry. It's very friendly. I'm sure you guys would agree. But if you can really reduce who you have to fight against for that, bottom dollar, it changes things. And then over the course of the years, the branding, the reputation, it takes on a life of its own, and then you really get to stand out, which is where I think we've been fortunate to be up to this point. But as you guys know, it never stops.
Yeah, for sure. So the laws in New Jersey, I think they're fairly similar to New York's public school laws for mandating IPM notification and that kind of thing. So that's what you dove into because administrations were having a hard time sort of complying with all that. Is that right?
That's exactly right. In fact, sometimes I say it tongue in cheek. I mean, I love pest management, but a good majority of my day to day really is paperwork and like the term I used before is risk mitigation. These districts, they deal with thousands of people when you consider the educational facilities. The school communities, the parents, the extensions of all these people, and people are sensitive to different things. And being that it's a law, and this is what I tell people all the time, what's the one thing that can happen? I mean, lawsuits. And that's just not something when people in facilities have so many things to deal with, you want a vendor that you can rely on that's going to protect your interests.
Sure. Have you had to deal with that in a legal sense? Have you had to go to court or PTA meetings or things like that to sort of defend your client?
I have not gotten to that point. I've been in about 3 or 4 situations where it was on that brink. Proud to say that our program held up as it should to eliminate that potential situation. In fact, the DEP and University of Rutgers and myself, we do trainings throughout the year. And in my presentation, I talk about those instances to really create a picture in the minds of people of where this can go. And what I say in the presentations is that, you don't have to really pay that close attention. It might just be another thing to you. But when you're faced with a danger of a liability like we're talking about, things tend to move fast. So the end goal is you want to be prepared from the get-go so that you can move in confidently with the information that you need to display to the people that want to know.
Yeah, for sure. I've had to testify a few times in landlord-tenant disputes and property management type things supporting our clients. And I'll tell you, it's a lot more fun to argue with an attorney or a judge when you have documentation and records on your side than when you don't. you want to have everything in a row, all your ducks in a row. And yes, sir, I have that information. Yes, I have that document. That makes a big difference. And to walk into a courtroom confident that you can help your client out is priceless, really.
Yeah, and it resonates, and you gentlemen have, like we were saying a little bit before the podcast started, I admire your businesses and your leaders in the industry, and you're always out front in doing the right thing. I mean, a lot of times it doesn't have to be more technical than just doing the right thing. Avoid being a fly by night and just trying to get a quick buck. When you set that foundation, the right people that you want to be working with will recognize it. So I tip my cap to you both as well.
Thanks. Now, something like this, it sounds like all sunshine and roses. Like, why don't we just all specialize and we'll just go in one direction, whatever. What did you have to give up? You have to look away from something and defend, I'm not going to get drawn into something in order to be able to effectively specialize in a niche. So what do you feel like what was hard for you to look away from?
In the beginning, it had a lot to do with, the niche was developing. and I was happy that it was, but it didn't form into a sustainable business overnight. So as the scales were tipped from my residential and my other commercial work to schools and education, I started to see, wow, a lot of these eggs are in one basket. And if something happened, and there could be a lot of somethings, this whole thing that you put years of work into could essentially be upended when that much revenue is dedicated to one thing. So that really is the short answer. And then, at some point when, I noticed I didn't have to pick up the phone to, get new business, and things were moving quickly. We were expanding fast, and we are, that at that point, I did the polar opposite of what I just said. I just dedicated everything to it. The sacrifice is I'm giving up revenue on the residential side. It's just not a space where I think we excel. So, we have to take a few steps back, in my opinion, to stay focused and trained on the things that we need to do. And rather than driving X amount of miles to satisfy this customer, we have too many other entities that we are responsible for taking care of. So, but you do have to give it up. It is a sacrifice. I'm putting a positive twist on it because I think we're going to grow due to it. But, your bottom line is taking a hit.
So early on, you kind of just took what you can get: residential, commercial, educational, and then what has that process looked like over the last, you've been in business 14 years now, about? What's that looked like, just slowly kind of chunking off what sections that you didn't feel like fit your vision?
Yeah, I mean, everything just developed pretty quickly. And, as you have more resources to work with, I mean, one thing that I presume a lot of your listeners may agree with, that, I'm always investing in the company. And when you're investing in the company and your people, it tends to take a certain path to get where you end up. And, another thing we recently did a couple of years ago is the same idea with pest control and the IPM laws in schools. I started a different W-9, totally different EIN for a lawn care company. So I kind of cherry picked in the same customer base, but a totally different service with the same concept. So at this point, we're really doubling down on the whole concept. And, again, that's been successful for us up to this point as well.
Wow. So how big a role does regulatory play in this being a productive and profitable niche? It seems like without some of that regulation coming, that we all, I know in New York when we had the neighbor notification laws coming in that instituted a lot of this, and in the early 2000s, there was a lot of complaining, a lot of griping. Oh my God, we can't do this. But it's like, that's what created the little umbrella that you can live under and go, yeah, we got this thing. How much does that play into it? Do you feel like that's a big part?
I think it's a very big part. And, candidly, it's the big question, right? And I mean, like, what if the regulatory and a component went away? Do I lose a business? I do believe school districts want to do the right thing because you're still dealing with young students. And in New Jersey, the IPM component is a study on asthma and cancer rates among children. So there's a serious connection to that. But to more directly answer your question, the regulatory component is very big. The DEP in New Jersey really has the final say. EPA is involved. They seem to be a little bit more regional. They're curious as to what regions are doing what. And health departments are the really local level. But if something doesn't look right, they'll kick it to DEP. And DEP has a very organized structure. I think they're very fair. But if something isn't done right in the best interest of the children, that hammer is really what keeps a lot of the schools, I think, in line.
Yeah. So now the other thing that interests me with companies that have a very strong niche specialization is your internal and external culture. So do your technicians, like, if you just were to send them out and be like, hey, we're doing a whole bunch of residential ant jobs today and whatever, would that be like a culture shock for them? Are they very much like they see themselves, we do these things and pride ourselves on these certain things, and sort of does that define them a little bit?
Yeah, man, it's like you worked yourself in my brain, because these are the things that I kind of lose sleep about, and it's a big reason, excuse me, a big part of the reason why we got out of that residential segment, because a lot of it, the nuts and bolts of it, come down to what you can and can't use, in these schools, and we have to deal with 25B exempt products and et cetera. So, like when I say, "Hey guys, put your Stank brain on," we can go about certain things, but I'm not really confident. I mean, the things we drive home in house at all our meetings is paperwork, courtesy, promptness, appearance, and because these are 12-month contracts, and you have to earn that, but it's there. Would I be confident sending any of one of my newer guys? And Andy, you had a picture of a bed bug infestation that gave me chills on that that faceplate for the outlet, the power outlet. I mean,
that wasn't at a school, just so you know.
I don't think so. So, like that, I'm just. You're right. So, I think to put my eggs in this basket and have the parallel business with the lawn care, I'm just that IPM entity.
I like the Stank brain. That's a good saying. That's fantastic. Hey, it's interesting because I've seen it in our people. We specialize in commercial. It's more generalized commercial, not just schools like you not just, but not schools specifically. And I have had where I found over the years, I had to start to catch myself in training and make sure I was explicit to tell people a lot of the things I'm telling you in our training is not legal and illegal. It's our best practices, how we do things, but it's such an ingrained thing that I've heard technicians, and it came up because somebody said, "Oh, it's illegal. You can't put a station like that, or you can't do that." I'm like, no. There's a lot of practices out there that are legal, and we have to sort of differentiate because it's just part of the culture of how we do our work, that it becomes like second nature to people. So, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different products and services that we have to stay up on because the technology's changed. I mean, at this point, and this wasn't the case 10 years ago, there are some really effective low impact products for even ticks. I recently came across a trap that is 100% rodenticide free. I'm kind of testing it out for myself. That has it works on a CO2 canister that can give you up to 6 months of working life and power. I mean, these are potential game changers. And, when you have contracts like you do in the public sector, it's not just the schools, but, you have a purchase order for the year, but then there are games within games. You have to maintain the individual schools, and there are programs. And as needs pop up, to be able to provide them with something they've never seen before, it gives me as a business owner the freedom to really, be creative with my business, which I have a lot of fun doing as well.
Yeah, that's the funnest part. Now, do you geographically cover more territory than if you were less specialized? Do you think that your technicians would, if you were less specialized, try to condense their route a lot tighter versus, I imagine school districts, you're kind of covering a bigger region for each school district. They might have 8, 10, 15 schools in a district, and then the next district is a ways away. So do you feel like you spread out more than if you were less specialized?
That's something that I've proceeded very cautiously with, because the price points need to make sense if something is a little too far out. The one thing that is very beneficial working with New Jersey schools is New Jersey is a very densely populated state. And, in the way the districts are set up, at least right now, you're right, Andy. I mean, some of them, we have a district with over 50 plus schools. So that's going to create a big geographical range. And then, all right, well, this one's only 15 minutes away from there. So we kind of, we grow it. It kind of works itself out organically. But we do have a tough time if there's something where it's a 90-mile northwest from the nearest account. It's always a tough answer to have or conversation to have with the prospective client. It's never, in my opinion, a good look to say, we can't quite do it. But rather, I would say at this point, the price points don't make sense. It's way outside of market value. But, to that point, though, we have been able to kind of, grow in little clusters.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. I didn't really think the population density in New Jersey, up here in upstate, some of our school districts are humongous as far as geography, like the amount of square miles that they cover, as opposed to like they're small schools, but they're spread way far apart from each other. So just a different world.
Chris, do you have any insight? I'm curious. Well, two things. Do you have advice for newer company like my company? I'm in the sort of get every bit of business that I possibly can stage. We're in our 4th year, so very much in like the don't die kind of phase still, which is fun. Do you have any advice on like how to decide if you should go super niche and like how to kind of pair that out? And then I was curious about kind of company culture. I don't know how big your team is, but if you have tips on that.
Yeah. Also, really, really great questions there, because I think to answer the question, Gabe, in terms of, what would you recommend? This is a weird one. Don't get caught up in what you do, which is pest management, because there are a lot of good pest control minds out there. Many companies can kill a bug a different way. And what happens is, if too many companies that I think we agree upon exist, and there are a lot of us out there, if the same client calls, that person and says, we have ants, and then that person says, well, we can take care of those ants very effectively and guarantee it. And then they check with another company, they do it for $10 less, and so on and so forth. Question becomes, where does it stop? It's a race to the bottom. So what happens is the client gets incredibly picky, and you're working for a profit margin that just isn't worth it. And where does it stop? Are you dangling off a 30-foot roof trying to, exclude a squirrel for $30? You don't want to be in that world. So what I've always said to people, I was traditionally trained, professionally trained in sales, even when I left the industry. And what sales ultimately is identifying pain points. And pain is not a bad word. It's something different. Like, what do people like? What do they need? And how is it something like, and everybody has certain things that they're better at. And maybe it's something that works. Now, in my case, look, I like to suit and tie it. I like to do the presentations in front of the administrators. I like the mental game. I like the paperwork. I like the compliance. I like dealing with the state entities, and it's worked for me. But I would the core recommendation is, don't look at your business and what you do as just about eliminating pests. That's what we do, but it's what our messaging is and what we give to the general public, whatever grouping that may be, that has value to them. And I think you'll unlock a lot of new things. In terms of the company culture, I have 4 full-time techs, and I'm proud to say in all these years, I actually have not fired any one of them. And my 2, longer tenured gentlemen right now are north of 5 years with me. So, what are the core tenets of, keeping your people? Well, you want them, I give them autonomy. I give them their own credit card. I trust them. I don't micromanage them. I always expect that they do the right thing. We have candid conversations if something does fall short. And look, let's be very blunt. I pay them incredibly well. It's worth it to me to pay somebody an extra $5, $7, $8 an hour than the industry norm, maybe even more, if it means that there's longevity, because then I have a basis to grow, and they're satisfied that they can have a living that they're proud of, and that they know that they're part of something that's growing. And I'll say to them, I can't guarantee anything, but over the course of time, as this thing grows, there's going to be more opportunities. And over the course of even just the past couple of years, that's been the case. We have Blue Ribbon, the lawn care company. I have a tech that's doing internal operations. He's on a path to a general manager role. And, I think that, this isn't a dead end stagnant thing. You make it something that is energetic. And hey, we went to a Knicks game a couple of weeks ago. We have fun together too.
At a Knicks game, you had fun. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah,
Just,
good point.
just,
Are the Knicks
are
still around?
they're better this year, right? Knicks
They're
are
better, but the one game we went to, they lost like in the previous 10.
Yeah, I know. Better is relative. So, I mean, you couldn't have gotten worse.
Years, Andy, of hell.
That's right. Okay. So what about marketing? With niche specialization, I mean, doesn't that pull a lot of the cost out of the marketing budget? You don't really have to like advertise yourself as much. Am I right about that? Or
nailed it. And even in the beginning, before any of this really developed, I have a mentor, and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about putting money into just get my name out there. He's like, no. He's like, your background is in sales, hit the streets and hustle. No one's going to, it's overload. There's marketing, and in certain instances, it's information overload. Our chemical and, costs are down. I mean, some of the specialty stuff that we need to buy are a little bit more expensive, but we're not putting in thousands of dollars a week of new product because we don't apply that much. What I do is I really double, triple, and quadruple down into the formats where and again, the whole concept of a niche business is you have a lot of eyes that have like-minded objectives looking at you. And it's those publications, it's those trade shows, it's those hospitality events that I will invest big to remain a big name and an evolving name, hopefully, in what we do. So it's very specialized marketing. And if you're just throwing things into the wind, I mean, especially in educational facilities, if I'm advertising in some magazine where buildings and ground supervisors aren't looking, it's literally wasted money.
Yeah. So then at that point, the 6-7% operating ratio amount that the MPMA says you should be in your marketing budget. If you're spending 1-2% of your revenue, you have that extra that you can invest then into going to trade shows and doing these other things and back into your people. Because honestly, having those technicians that are long-term technicians that are well-paid, reliable, awesome techs, that's part of your sales pitch right there.
Exactly. And that's really what it comes down to, efficiency of revenue and, how you're going to make strategic decisions. Better looking vehicles. I believe in, better looking uniforms. Having professional email addresses, having, a web presence that is, listen, you want to operate like a mom and pop operation with the appearance of a Fortune 500 budget. And there are ways to do it. There are ways to come across very professionally. And these are a lot of the things, Andy, you're right, that I invest in those things that are going to yield the greatest results at the end of the day.
So did you have a moment where you had someone call you on reputation in this niche that was like a holy cow, this is happening?
Yeah, and more so recently, there's been a breakthrough. I don't know why. There are a few other, business reasons with competition, et cetera, but usually it's a relationship business. At these trade shows, you see the same faces, but I received a few calls from people I didn't know that wanted to work with me based on reputation. Now, creates a different challenge because on the back end, I need to get to know them. These are my clients. And, it's a little bit more difficult to sustain, go through some of the evolutions of how it is when you have a new client. Sometimes that client in operations, well, we're used to the way the other company did it. And you have to go through those things. So you want to solidify those relationships as quickly as you can. But it's a good problem to have, I'll tell you that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I always say there's the retraining process. From when you take over an account, and then my favorite is the one where people go, yeah, we had this service and it didn't really work, but it cost this much. Can you do it the same amount? Do the same thing? You're like, wait a minute, why are we going to do that?
That's one of my favorites too.
Chris, do you see?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Chris, do you see electronic monitoring stuff being something in the future of that kind of educational space / commercial space?
And you guys are hitting all the big points here. I mean, yes, to an extent, but a smaller extent. I think conventional wisdom is technology will take you to places quicker. You need to pick your head up time to time and see where the industry is, because I can't believe it's been 14 plus years at this point, but time flies, and you need to check out what's out there. But I do think that if things are a little too electronic, in my space at least, if there are entities that are going to show up on site, even if I'm not there, they need to gain access to the information. And I've seen electronic options where a customer has been locked out. You forget a password or something. That doesn't help the state. In fact, it aggravates them. So there are plenty of things that, the old school on-site paperwork and retaining of records has tremendous value. I'd like to give a pop to somebody I recently saw at an MPMA conference. I can't remember the name of the company, Florida-based, but they do virtual SDS and labels, which is phenomenal. In fact, they even have a barcode that you can scan, and everything that you would use or you can manually put in there is there. Because one, it's a minor detail, but it's important in my game. Where what if I switch out an SDS and label because of a product that is discontinued, and I want to replace it with something else? I'm fortunate enough to have upwards of between 700 and 800 monthly stops that we have to service every month. Now, let's take 700. Let's say a new copy of SDS and labels are 10 pages. That's 7,000 pages. And that's how we've kind of been doing it, and we've grown. So when I found a service like that, it's been phenomenal. I've been talking about the rodent traps where they have technology where it'll give you an idea of the hits. I still haven't seen value in the actual exterior and even like tin cat rodent. I find that the good old fashioned, getting them out of there, because if you give the customer too much information, sometimes, as I'm sure you guys know, it gets in their head. There's a mouse here. That means there's 10,000 mice in this, in this room, which, I don't know if I really want those problems. So it's a very delicate dance. It's something where you have to really hone in on what benefits your business, and not just signing up for something that is wasting your time and money. It's really got to be impactful to what you do.
So, Gabe, since you brought up the electronic rodent monitoring, I had to throw this out there. Just it's a little on a sideline. Alex Wade, that we had on the show a little while back, is from England, and he writes for some of the magazines over there. They have trade magazines, and he posted something about that today, where he says there's nothing wrong with smart technology, but everything wrong with how it's sold to us. And I couldn't help but hear echoes of our conversations in that a little bit. That I feel like that a lot of that smart technology and remote monitoring, we're still figuring out how it's going to be best applied. I don't think we have a handle on it quite yet.
And that might be, like, I'm thinking another niche thing. Like if you're AIB, there are a few very high level accounts that it's almost like a laboratory. Pharmaceutical accounts. There might be value in creating a spreadsheet or printing a report easily that is going to help everyone monitor certain trends. But I mean, look, if you're involved in a lot of residential work or a warehouse or even a school, the objective is pretty clear. And then the techniques, good old fashioned technician work, never dies. You got to stay up on it. You have to train. But it's all about, like you guys are saying, it's making it fit to what you do. And a one size fits all, it might not happen. And most of us are small businesses. If we're, a $300 million company and you can absorb certain things, you can try some certain things. But, with certain budgets and certain, revenue points that we need to hit to keep this thing moving and grow, you got to make your decisions very, very, you have to make them count.
Yeah. Now, with you having some like formal training in sales, how is the sales process different when you're specialized in something versus just you're cold calling and you can sell anybody anything?
The sales process is very meticulous. It's one that people don't like being sold to. A lot of times someone's coming in, well, they just want your money. Well, look, before we get to any of that, let's go ahead and identify, what your needs are. Let's identify pain points, and let's go through the process of what that looks like. And then, let's create a scenario where, if X, Y, and Z was satisfied, how would that have an impact on your day-to-day and your operations? And really what it boils down to in the final analysis is again, we're not talking about pest control or who can kill that ant the best. We're talking about, in my world at least, and a lot of other people that are in operations and facilities management, if you have a service on this side here that you're confident in, if you're confident in your program, what does it mean for you? It usually means time, which is incredibly valuable to go ahead and proceed with a lot of things in their day. There are a lot of businesses, there are a lot of services, and not everybody has, a great level of confidence in everything that goes on. And to be that part that makes their lives easier is the part of the sales process that you want to get to and really illustrate.
So, Chris, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, can they find you on LinkedIn or websites or anything like that?
Yeah, Safe Schools IPM, stankenvironmental.com, and blueribbonlc.com. But LinkedIn is great, and I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Great. And when you're following Chris on LinkedIn, come and join the Coast to Coast Pest Talk group on LinkedIn as well, because it's going down. And thanks so much for listening, guys. We appreciate all your support. Like and subscribe to our YouTube, our podcast, and leave us a review, particularly on the podcast, because it helps us grow.